Hello and welcome to John and James Live. My name is John Hastings. I am with my co-host, the one and only
James CeeLo.
James CeeLo. You got middle names, James. It's got to be Tarquin or something, isn't it?
You think so, wouldn't you? Have a guess.
Rodney.
I used to get called Rodney at school. Would you believe it?
Why?
I don't know. It was just weird. It's
Only Fools and Horses.
Obviously,
Rodney.
Only Fools and Horses. It was Rodney U. Plonker.
Rodney U.
Man.
Plonker. Anyway, James, today we're going to be talking about. Yeah, that was random. We're a little bit random sometimes. Health tech.
You're random.
Is mental health tech the answer, James? We've got a bit of a mental health epidemic going on, haven't we, at the moment? So first of all, James, I'm going to put you on the spot and get you to define mental health. What is mental health, James? Talk to me. I like putting you on the spot.
Well, wow.
Think.
Wow. It's different things for different people, isn't it? It's interesting the terms that we use, which we just kind of like throw away, that you say, well, that's mental health. But,
defining it is more difficult, isn't it?
Well, I would give you my definition. So my definition is how you feel in yourself.
Is this the Webster Dictionary
No.
definition?
No, I haven't got my dictionary with me. This is my definition.
Yeah,
I think it's your perception of self within your immediate surroundings, within your environment. It's how you feel in your skin. I think there's so many different ways in which we can kind of define it, but it's that perception of how you are, the relationships you have, what's happening in your life, and communication with others. I think all ties into mental well-being.
Yeah.
And that work that you do on yourself, you're sitting with how you're feeling, emotions around certain things, the way you're triggered. We talked about this on previous podcasts in terms of actually just taking the time out to consider what's going on, as opposed to just continuously going through this sort of loop of reacting to things, but not actually doing any self-analysis. So it's giving yourself space and the time to be able to do that. I think some introspection, self-reflection, and to consider why you are reacting in the way that you're reacting to certain circumstances.
Yeah, I would say when I say mental health epidemic, really, I'm probably talking about a chronic loop of negative thinking or some type of brain wiring that's causing you not just psychological issues, but potentially physical issues as well. Like if you've got chronic anxiety or if you've got chronic depression, your health is how well you feel, your well-being levels, how you feel about yourself, then your physical health as well. So it all ties in together, doesn't it? The sort of mind.
It's intrinsically linked. I mean, if you read any Gabor Mate, that he would cite childhood trauma to a manifestation of physical ailment, so illness, disease, or dis-ease that comes about from sort of years of suppressing anger, people pleasing, not considering yourself in those circumstances where you're just doing things for everybody else. And because you haven't processed those emotions, that they can lay themselves down in your system, cause inflammation and issues later on in life. So a healthy way in which we can process that or externalize it, feel those emotions viscerally, have that release, is a good thing to do in that respect.
I think it's good to define it, James, because it is bandied around quite a bit, isn't it? Mental health. So it's pretty similar to physical health. You could be going to the gym, eating well, doing all the right things, but you stop for 2-3 months and you could be going completely in the opposite direction, couldn't you? So it's an ongoing process. We're not saying life should be all roses with no challenge. It's not bad to feel depressed. It's not bad to feel the feelings of anxiety. These are not necessarily bad things. They could be guiding, aren't they, James? Negative feelings could be a guide for you to go into a certain direction. It's probably more being able to guide people along this process, because what's happening on a macro level is the amount of change, isn't it, James, in terms of what we're used to as primitive human beings, that human connection, this technological shift. We're used to probably being outside, being more community based, doing more physical labor, and now pretty much there's a lot of jobs that people are doing now where it's all in your head. You're isolated, you're away from people, you're very much on the screen, heavy screen time.
Yeah.
This is a complete shift. We haven't caught up with, I don't know if we would ever catch up with the speed of technology. Our biology is not on that level, is it? So we're always competing.
Well, this kind of brings us on to that subject of health tech, doesn't it? That if things can be integrated into our current sort of system, into the brain, into the body generally, that will enable us to keep pace with technology, that the sort of, some sort of implant in the brain, or, some way in which we can offload, it's almost like kind of, if you've seen any Harry Potter stuff, that sort of the Pensieve is there, where you can kind of remove memories and then sort of deposit them somewhere else, that you have like an external hard drive that you can free up the system, that the body isn't then, because things that you've done in your life, that the memory has faded because it isn't entirely relevant on a daily basis. Long-term memory is there to enable you to avoid being eaten, things that will happen that could harm you. You need to remember them on a long-term basis so that you don't do it again. But there's things that sort of have happened a long time ago that aren't, survival orientated, that you've got to let go of, because your brain just doesn't have the capacity to keep it there. But if there is going to be something in the future that enables you to download those memories for you to then watch back at a later date, but then I guess it kind of almost looks a bit like photography, that we've got all these photographs on our phone. So in digital land, we don't print them out. We don't necessarily have them out like we used to, or put them in a photo album.
I used to love a photo album, didn't you? You go around your nan's house and she pulls out the old photo album. You've seen it before, but it's still brilliant.
They've written a date on there and when it happened and all that sort of thing. But
I love those photo albums. Transitory. Yeah, it was a nice, like a nice cup of tea, piece of cake. Auntie gets the photo albums out.
Yeah,
and then you go through them all.
When he was little, you still got.
It was
those
really
cheeks.
good though, wasn't it? I remember that. That was really, really cool.
So this is the thing, that if it's all kind of digitized and it's removed and put on a hard drive, it's like, are we going to take the time to go back and periodically watch it, like we would open up that photo album? That's an interesting concept, isn't it?
Yeah, now I see it as the mental health space with the technology as being, you've got one side is your external environment. So you're trying to manage your screen time, you're trying to manage the stresses of modern day life. And then these apps and tech are trying to help you on that journey, whether it's measuring your steps, your heart rate, your sleep quality, duration. It's a measurement tool to keep you conscious, keep you accountable, and give you some feedback and data. So what's measured is managed, and vice versa on that side.
Yeah.
And then you've got your internal state, haven't you? How you feel about yourself, your childhood experiences, whether you've processed them or not, or what you focus on. Potentially that's coming from the people around you, or how you've grown up, and you're trying to do things to improve that, whether it's meditation with the meditation apps, you're doing maybe talk therapy. There's probably other things as well that you can do. Obviously there's drug orientated medicines to go down that route, but it's also new, James, isn't it? Even psychology, it's quite a new concept. We're only talking the last 50 to 100 years. All of this is super new. And then we're bringing it into the health tech space. So what have you used? What health tech have you used, James, in general, in terms of the mental health tech? Have you used anything to do with mental health tech?
Yeah, absolutely. So app-wise, Headspace, Calm, meditation ones, and both of them do like sleep stories and ones that, and I'll listen to something just to get me off to sleep, and I'm literally gone like that. So there's very kind of easy to listen to, but Calm, for example, have got the Daily J. So like every day you can have like a 7-minute kind of mindful meditation thing, which is very short, but just gives you his perspective. And it's clear that he's got a whole team of people that are coming up with the concepts, and he just narrates it, but it's all around things.
Is that on Calm, is it?
That's on Calm. So
I think the guy who created Moshi Monsters as well, didn't he? He's a very entrepreneurial, creative guy. I can't remember what his name is. But
so Jay Shetty, a guy that was a monk. I mean, he's just a guy from, I don't know, South London, maybe East London. I'm not sure, but went to, I think it was a Tibetan monastery and became a monk for 3 or 4 years or something like that. Anyway, he's now kind of out in LA, and he's sort of set himself up as a self-help kind of guru type thing, and now does these 7-minute bite-sized meditation bits with things that you sort of encounter on a daily basis. Just as a kind of reminder, we all know pretty much the concepts, but it's just having that as a daily reminder to enable us to get some sort of perception and perspective on certain things. So it's a nice little one. Headspace do a very similar thing. I mean, Headspace more kind of British orientated than Calm. Calm's more kind of for the American market, more American meditation on teachers on there. So depending on your appetite really for that, Headspace is
I think British. Sam Harris has come out with a meditation app as well, isn't it? So we've gone from a bit of an evolution, even just meditation, isn't it? It was more a thing that people would maybe do in groups, in physical contact with each other in a group, meditating together. People obviously did do it alone as well. Then it's moved on to the app facilitating it. But maybe the next step, what do we think is going to be? More personalization? Is that where these apps are going to go? Because now you're probably going to have the person's voice, but AI will be able to generate the whole talk, won't it? Or what do they call it? The
experience.
The guided experience. Then you can basically write or talk you could talk to this app maybe during the week. It downloads everything you're saying. You talk to it like a therapist, and then it gives you a tailored meditation experience.
Yeah. And there's also a hybrid model now where you can be in person in a group meditation, but you're wearing headphones. And, that's a very, very curated experience with music and, kind of, I think there's sort of like a sound bath type experience incorporated into it. And then you can have, maybe some kind of mushroom medicine in that as well. It's fascinating how everything's been kind of curated in that respect to kind of assimilate lots of different elements into that kind of meditation space where actually you can just sit or stand or do something mindfully. But it is that element of not overthinking it, not trying to let the mind wander and focus on the breath and clear the mind and just sort of almost empty the mind. And thoughts are going to come in, invasive thoughts, but it's just sitting with them, I think, is the key thing.
I think it's going to go, James. I can see it going through this evolutionary stage, and then, like many things in life, like fashion, I reckon it goes 360, and then we end up using the tech to liberate ourselves, and then we go back again to human contact. So we'll go through this stage of, we used to meditate or be together. Even meditation, in some respects, you could see it as it might be unnecessary in certain communities. If you are connected to the space and you are together and you're living in the jungle or you're doing something like that, then you are presence. Everything you do is presence, isn't it? Every movement, every contact. Really, is meditation trying to protect you, or is it like a plaster on an environmental issue? You could probably argue both ways.
It depends on how you use it. It's like anything, exercise can be a way of punishing yourself, or it can be to nurture, nourish and nurture you. So you can either go out and thrash yourself, and it's like, fighting the demons. We've talked about the sort of, these people that are out there that are advocating for just doing extreme exercise and taking on extreme challenges. And that's like they're running away from something. It's proving something to themselves. It's about human endurance. Kind of get that achievement. I get that adrenaline. I get that dopamine. Understand that. But it's to the extent of self-detriment is tricky. If it's there to nurture you and to make you feel better, that's a positive thing. But, if it's causing you harm, then it needs to be looked at necessarily. I think meditation, the same thing, that maybe if you go into meditation kind of like bashing your head against the meditation wall, saying this will do what it needs to do for me, and I'm going to power on through it until it does, you're possibly looking at it in the wrong way.
Yeah. That it similar with therapy. If you're going to the therapist because you're isolated, and then you go to the therapist, you spend an hour there, and then you go back to your real life and you're isolated again. Then I used to say that with exercise when I was personal training. I was just like, look, there's 178 hours in the week. I don't know if that's right, actually. I need to check that. Is it 168, 179? I can't remember what it is, but there's 100 and something hours in the week.
Somebody check it.
And I just said, look, you're here with me for maybe 2 or 3. It's like 0.1%, 0.5% of the time. So it's what you're doing
for the rest of the time.
For the rest of the time, that really matters. And I guess it's the same with any of the health tech. As soon as we optimize our environment, I just got a feeling we're going to go back to human contact. We're going to go through this stage of isolation heavy tech usage.
Yeah.
I definitely think there's the whole data stuff is interesting. I think that can be going in the, going off in the background. But like you've said before, James, there's a flip side to data, isn't there? What was you saying about it in terms of, there was a podcast you're listening to where people are like getting anxious about their sleep score being low and things like that.
Yes, it's a double-edged sword. It's like they're almost exacerbating or creating a problem that wasn't necessarily there before by becoming anxious about the scores that they're getting, as opposed to listening to their body and, registering the innate ability that we have to understand our own physiology and how we're feeling. It's like we are relinquishing control to technology. So if we feel great and the app's telling us we're not feeling great, then you go, well, am I really feeling great? And then second guessing yourself, and vice versa. If the app tells you you're amazing, you're 100% score, but you feel like shit, it's like, well, I better go out and do, the app's telling me I've got to go out and do some exercise because I'm apparently in a great state, but I don't feel it. So but I think at the end of the day, it's like, if it can change behaviors for the positive, to actually sort of say, well, maybe that pizza that I ate at midnight isn't going to be the greatest thing for my sleep, or the alcohol that I drank, or the caffeine that I had at, 1 o'clock in the morning. I did sleep, but actually the quality of my sleep, the deep restorative sleep, wasn't great. Then that's one thing. So, it's got to be taken into context that actually, if you're using it to improve your health outcomes, but then it doesn't then become a source of anxiety that you're going, oh, I've got to, check it every morning, and that wasn't good, and what am I doing? And it's not giving you the answers or a strategy, and then you're just in a flat spin around it, then, it's tricky to see how that's going to benefit you. And just a conversation I've had with a few people, they're not wearing their Apple Watch in bed, for example. They're taking it off. They don't want to be in contact all the time. They like that bit of respite because they're switched on 24/7. And it's that constant feedback loop that you're never getting away from it. It's like, wearing these things, going out for a walk, it's listening to podcasts, it's educational. I saw it as a good use of time, but if it's being done all the time, you're not having conversations with people walking past you, you're not listening to the birds and hearing the wind in the trees and the rustle in the grass and all that sort of thing. So it's got its place. We're not kind of bashing it and saying that it shouldn't exist, but it's like, well, how do we get that happy medium to say that we can integrate it in a healthy way and have it enhance our lives, but not take over?
I think so. You're right, James. I totally agree with that. I've been prone to the whole listening to podcasts consistently on walks and stuff, but it is nice to be present. You can end up in conversations with people that you wouldn't have anyway. You get time to actually think and let your brain come up with its own ideas, don't you? There's so much benefit of, and health tech, potentially part of their journey is to help people to detach from the stuff in a way, isn't it? It's not to get them to use more, it's to get them to use it in a balanced way, a data-driven way. But other things that are good, James, are I saw a research on how good the ChatGPT type of models were with therapy. What's your thoughts on the AI therapists? They're becoming more popular. They are going to be deployed more and more, aren't they? There's some very positive research around them.
It's fascinating to see, because again, kind of going back to your point about human contact, it's like, I don't know that we can really get away from that this cyclical nature of this will circle back to human contact and picking up signals and the subtleties that only one human to another can transmit, that you're sort of sanitizing the process by having ChatGPT or an AI generated therapist. But what you do have, I think, is a stopgap or something that can carry you through as an adjunct to human contact, that it's there 24/7 whenever you need it. It can be programmed to such that if you are having ruminating thoughts, that it could take you out of that loop, because it's this external reminder. And this is the thing with meditation. It enables you to clear your mind to an extent that actually you can start making sense of those ruminating thoughts in your head. It's like, well, and it's the questioning, do I know that to be true? And if an AI generated therapist can just remind you of that, when you're in the darkness and that loop of negative thinking, that you're not necessarily logically going, well, do I know that to be true? Is that actually the case? But if something you could just literally tap on and it goes, right, James, what's going on? And you can then speak to it and say, look, I'm really feeling this particular way. And, I'm in this negative spiral. And it's like, okay, talk me through it and start asking you the questions, because that's basically what therapy is asking the right questions. Yeah. And if it's programmed to do that, then it can very credibly take you out of those thought patterns just by asking you the questions you probably already know, but just because you're in that cycle of thought that you can't necessarily process at that moment in time. So I think they're, potentially a fantastic tool for that.
Yeah, I think it can be amazing. I think it's bringing the cost down, isn't it, massively, and making it more accessible for everybody, because the problem with a lot of mental health services at the moment is they're not accessible to everybody. It can be very expensive doing individual sessions. There's probably a huge waiting list on places like the NHS, and they can't really be too personalized with, unless it's really bad. I guess they would fast track you, but in general, I think there's a big scope, isn't there, James, for health tech?
Yeah.
What do you think?
And I think it fills in the gaps in the system. The system isn't perfect by any means, and there are people that are falling between the gaps.
Yeah.
So if there's anything that's there that can facilitate in the meantime, I'm not saying it's it's kind of a panacea, I suppose, to an extent, but it's not the fix. But I think as technology gets better and better, it'll be a really nice adjunct too.
And Paveen says, Wiser makes me feel insignificant. I think Wiser might be is it a mental health app, Paveen? It could be. A penguin that responds in a predictable way, no matter how I respond. I want a human, not a bot.
Not a bot.
Yeah. And then Paveen says 6-month wait, which is
it's too long.
Okay, there's a lot of work to be done there, James, isn't it? This is so early in this stage of development, isn't it? I guess the bots are going to be a bit clunky. It's not going to be the smoothest of responses, but it's a start. I think give it 5 years, 10 years even, it's only going to keep improving, isn't it, I guess, on this side.
And the thing that I think is probably the caveat, it's like some people look at therapy and they go, well, I came out and I was expecting the therapist to tell me what to do. I thought that I'd come out and have a very clear idea as to what the strategy was. And, they were advising me to do this, this, and this. So I just go away and do it. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
The therapist is there to enable you to make sense of the thoughts that are in your head, and to sort of exercise those demons to an extent by allowing you to get to where you need to be and creating your own solutions by, again, asking the right questions or guiding you in a certain way. But they're not there to tell you exactly what to do, because they're lived experience is not your lived experience. And it's that agency that you then can create this for yourself. But I think, if people are going into an interaction with an AI-generated therapist, thinking that that's going to be the case, that it's just going to come up with a solution for you, then you're going to be disappointed. But I think it will give you the prompts. It will take all of the data, all of the recorded interviews and sessions that have been done with, eminent, prominent therapists throughout history, whatever the data's there, it will all be processed and then will come out with a blueprint for what to say, what to do in certain circumstances.
Yeah.
But what would be interesting is if there was a reporting mechanism within it, that if you were saying certain things, that it would alert social services or something along those lines, that it could be fed back to your GP or some reporting mechanism, because there's a kind of an accountability piece in there. You go to see a human being, and if they feel that you're in danger or danger to others, then it's their duty to report that.
Yeah, Praveen says you have to be suicidal to get any real personal help. Too many fall because they lack human connection. I've known too many adults and 2 children who have committed or attempted suicide. And that's what I was. Thanks for that, Praveen. I get that. And I was going to just say that as well. I think maybe some of these services, we've got to think bigger in terms of innovation. What therapy doesn't do is it doesn't provide physical touch or love, probably 2 of the biggest things that human beings are actually craving. So you're not going to get that from a therapist, are you? It's not. No. It's not gonna happen. So that's probably a huge gap. I know there's things in America that I've seen that people are paying for hugging services.
That's in the UK as well, mate.
Yeah. And I'm not.
Which
poo-pooing
the fact
it.
that it has to exist, but the fact that it has to exist is a slight indictment on society, isn't it? That we've got to pay for people to give us a hug is troubling. But I mean, it's majority of therapy is, as I said, a vehicle for you to be able to make sense of what's going on in your head and the reasons why you're having those thoughts.
Yeah. So Praveen says, you say early, but AI is being forced on us. It's not like Calm that helps you recenter by choice. The Penguin is a stopgap.
So what is the Penguin?
I don't know what the Penguin is. I guess that's probably it might be an NHS app or some type of AI NHS app. Let us know, Praveen, on that side. But these things,
so it's not perfect, is it, by any means?
No, it's not perfect, and I think even a lot of these things maybe are addressing symptoms, James. So we're trying to put plasters on community problems, environmental problems. There's probably things in society, like we've said before, around housing, cost of living, which then affects human connection, human relationships, puts different pressures and dynamics on people. I guess if we got some of the fundamentals sorted, the basics, the open access to education, shelter, good food, connection, meaningful work, then a lot of these other symptoms-based technologies start to possibly fall away, James, or become less of? Do you think that will be the eventual future?
I mean, that's utopia, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I guess there's always going to be that socioeconomic model in respect of, where you've come from, social mobility, whether you feel like, you have agency over your outcomes in respect of that social mobility. If you think that, where you are is where you're going to stay, and, generation that came before you have been in that particular socioeconomic bracket, there's certainly a fair number of people that have managed to get themselves out of that sort of poverty trap. We talked about that as well, about entrepreneurship and, being somebody that's employed, or the workforce, part of the workforce, and the mentality that goes around that. And, it's a really interesting debate to have about, people that do elevate themselves out of poverty through hard work and, doing things that, using that trauma or that, social situation to bring themselves out, to elevate themselves out of poverty and have that as their kind of power. As opposed to, becoming part of the workforce, having a job, getting a salary. And, there's no stigma to either, I don't think. There's going to be people that are going to encourage that entrepreneurship, and the other people, because of their mentality, their upbringing, they want that stability of having a regular income. And that's absolutely 100% fine. And that's what society requires. But I think it's the point at which you feel you have no voice, no agency, no say over your outcomes. That's where things start to get really tricky.
Yeah. And Praveen says about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yeah. So that's what I was saying, Praveen, on that. If we can address some of those, the hierarchy of needs, food, shelter, predominantly, then all of a sudden the dynamics of relationships completely change. So people with have traumatic situations. Sometimes you've got parents, one or the other, or both, under a lot of stress. Potentially affects the dynamics of the relationship, affects the children. They grow up, you're eating convenience food, you're trying to sedate, you're becoming addicted because you're not connected with yourself. So you're maybe drinking alcohol, you're gambling, you're into pornography, or you're doing whatever you do to try and make yourself feel better short term. And then this can then proliferate into something chronic, can't it? Your body changes, your mind changes. So realistically, health tech,
I think there's... Yeah, go ahead, mate. Sorry.
Yeah, we're sort of putting plasters on some things, but we need to do both, don't we? Sometimes you do need a plaster. If there's gushing blood, you just need a bandage sometimes, until you transition and you come up with first principles problem solving. So it's not one or the other, one's bad. It is more of a transition, I would see it as. Yeah.
And I think, the thing with apps and, AI generated stuff is that we engage with it in the short term, but long term is a different issue. I think it'd be interesting to look at the stats of how long people subscribe. If it's a subscription app, for example, how long people subscribe to it, that it then becomes an emotional crutch or a need, and they are very unwilling to give it up. Or if it's just like, well, I kind of did it for a couple of weeks and
the novelty
didn't really make me feel different. Yeah, I was really invested in it. When I started using it, I thought this was going to change everything, that this was the answer. So I'm kind of looking at it that it's the follow-up and the aftercare of these apps and technology that potentially could exist in the human realm, that actually you have a way in which you can report back and say, I thought that last session we didn't really cover whatever, and I'd like to do more on that. Again, these AI generated ones would take all that into account, and then they could adapt. So there's still that element, but it doesn't take out of the equation the human to human contact, and that you feel that you're being listened to. And this is not just an algorithm that's, we can kind of close one eye and think, that looks like something that I'm familiar with, but we know deep down this is just technology that's talking back to us.
I think that's a great point there, James, about adherence coming from our personal training backgrounds, it is consistency of doing something is so important, isn't it? There's no point in getting people to do lots of running if they just hate running. You might be able to convince them and motivate them for 12 weeks to get a result, but that you leave them to their own devices, it's stopping. And how many people do meditation for a couple of weeks? Not even that. I reckon I would be very interested in the stats of people that do maybe 3-4 sessions and then never ever do it again. So it's integrating something. What makes things sticky for the long term? Because you don't really need to convince people to watch Netflix, do you?
No, you really don't.
You haven't got an adherence problem with that, have you? Realistically,
no. And it's got to be the way that it makes you feel, and there has to be something quite quickly that changes. And meditation isn't a quick fix. It really is not a quick fix. You're going to potentially, over sort of a course of weeks, start to get into a routine of doing it. But it's like anything that if it's not vitally important, that it's not a first part of your first aid kit, then it's quite quickly going to get pushed aside for something else that happens in life. If you're waking up later, so a lot of these sort of things is like maybe you meditate in the morning, but to meditate in the morning, maybe you've got to get up a little bit earlier. And then maybe you've had a late night the night before, and then you sort of were late getting up, and then you're into the sort of daily routine. Meditation is not high on the list. What you are working on is getting out the house and getting to work on time before your boss gives you a bollocking or you miss that deadline. So, it's to an extent, I think for me, sometimes it has to become a non-negotiable, but it's a belief system that is actually beneficial to you. If you don't believe it's beneficial, you won't do it, because that's the way we're hardwired. If it's not apparently beneficial, then it's not something that we're going to continue. But the issue with it is it does take a bit of time and, let's say, practice to start to get into the routine of doing it.
Because even if you believe it, James, you probably believe salad's good, but it doesn't stop you from, eating burgers, does it? It's one of those things. You might know that doing more exercise is good. Everybody knows, don't they, what they
Depends
really
how you
should
feel
be
about
doing.
yourself. It fundamentally comes down to how you feel about yourself at that moment in time. If you feel like shit and you feel like a worthless piece of shit, very unlikely you're going to stick anything in your body that's going to nurture you or nourish you or do anything that's going to be beneficial. When you're in that mind state, you're trying to hasten the end. You're not trying to preserve life.
What else could you do on the mental health tech thing? That was just get my creative brain thinking. It's like a pub. You go to the pub and you say, right, I want you to refuse to serve me drink. Maybe there's some type of an app that you pay for a calorie allowance, and you can only buy certain foods. Like you take that, take that out. You try to create an environment where you win. Like you're consciously saying, look, I don't want open access anymore. I don't want.
You're abdicating responsibility in that respect, aren't you?
Yeah.
That you're putting the responsibility onto something else.
Yeah, you're realizing the power of the environment. So you're not fighting the environment. You're actually putting yourself in the.
So you're taking the friction out of the system by, if I go to buy something, I cannot physically buy it.
Yeah.
If I go onto a website, I can't go on it because the parameters are there. We go back to the friend that you have that has given you passwords and then phoned you up and asked you for the passwords because I just want to very quickly go in. I remember that conversation. So
you want
it's exactly the same sort of
and you can't buy it. You're just like, man, I need to switch this app off.
Boxes
I want this chocolate.
that you can put your phone in. That you put your phone in the box and you set the code, you set the timer, and you cannot physically get into it.
Yeah.
For whatever length of time you've set on that timer. So there's all these kind of mechanisms that are there, but it's like have we lost that level of free will that we cannot make decisions for ourselves? And if you go into every aspect of your life and you say, look, I go into that shop, can't buy that, they won't serve me that. If I go into the pub, they won't serve me alcohol. I clearly can't navigate my own life. I have to have all these things in place. If all of a sudden they're taken away, or is it just a matter of like, it becomes then habit that you don't do it, and then you lose the interest around that particular thing.
Yeah.
Or if you're denying yourself something, so there's always two sides of the coin. If you're denying yourself that thing, is that going to make you desire it more?
Want it more. That's that's an issue, isn't it, on that side? Can you think of anything else, James, in terms of mental health tech? Because we've talked about, facilitating mental health through just general therapy, so talk therapy, that type of stuff. And even there's controversy around the practicalities of different types of therapy, isn't there? There's some people that say, don't rehash the past. You should be in your quantum field and thinking about the future. There's all different types of CBT to hypnotherapy. Then we've got the meditation side. So these are really, I would say, practical therapies facilitated through a phone or through AI. Can you think of anything else on a mental health tech base?
I can. It'd be great to have a wearable that would be able to pick up brain signals, so neurological pathways that represent rumination about certain things. So if you're going into negative spirals, it would be able to detect that and kind of just give you a little bit of a nudge in an opposite or an alternative direction to take you out of those negative spiral loops.
Yeah.
So something that would be able to detect those brain waves and then give you a prompt in whatever form that takes, just to take you out of that loop.
There's something in the meditation space that can see if you're in like theta, beta waves. There's something in what is that? Do you know what I'm talking about in meditation, where you can wear something and it tells you which one you're in? I'll check it out. I'll leave it in the comments. I can't remember what that one is, but in terms of mental
there will be a commonality.
Yeah. I think as well with the mental health tech, because of recently working from home, I've been working from home for a while, but having the TV on more, watching news, and your feed being curated through that, is so negative. There's such a negativity around that. So even just being able to curate your algorithms that are better for you.
Yes.
Because the news is ridiculous. Like, you come off of it thinking the world's going to end. If you get into a loop in terms of your social media, you can think it's really bad for your mental well-being. So there might be 100%. Something to do with curating algorithms.
Yeah. Self-preservation for me is not watching the news and not watching it on a regular basis, for sure.
Yeah.
Because I suddenly saw, it's like, again, the Matrix, that the curtain gets pulled back and you feel it, how visceral it is. The words that are used, and that, like, even on sort of the BBC, you're supposed to be impartial. There's still kind of a negative bias there. It's still just that sort of underlying insidious earworm that's planted there just to kind of keep you in a particular mindset. And it's the words that are used. It's the narrative that's there, the type of stories they're reporting on. If it's around the economy, around politics, they've got these stories of people who come on and be interviewed, and it's like, oh, my life is shit.
Yeah,
and
it's like one in a million circumstances that will, statistically never be you, but it's every single bad thing
Yeah, and there'll be a
That could
token good
potentially
news
happen.
story at the end, just to kind of bring everybody out of that sort of stupor of despair at the
Yeah.
end. It's like, we've given
But
you
it does
the
does
doom and the
leave you in a
gloom,
negative headspace, doesn't it, James? To be
100%. And
honest,
what do you
I
do with
think it
that?
affects.
What do you do with that? You know,
And if
what is
people
the
are
point?
downloading that into their brain, James, every day, they're
If they're
constantly
watching
being
it
fed
all the
this.
time.
It's so important in terms of health technology. It is a tech medium that it's being fed through. So whether that's the TV, the radio, or your
Yeah,
mobile phone now, you got to be able to curate what's coming in. You know, if you're eating a lot of junk, your body's going to react. If you're feeding your mind a lot of negativity and junk, you're going to be your system's going to be jacked up, isn't it? You're
yeah,
potentially more predisposed to negative
yeah,
thought loops or anxiety. So you've got to be able to manage what you're doing without a
yeah.
doubt.
And then you've got programs around, you know, what is supposedly healthy eating, and the psychology around eating, and people are absorbing that and thinking that's kind of absolute fact. And that, oh wow, yeah, no, that's me. And then the advice that's given on these particular programs is, you know, I just watch it in despair sometimes, because it's
Yeah,
like, this is what people are consuming, and it's not for accuracy, it's for entertainment, and it has to be sensationalized, and it's got to be shocking to get people to watch it.
to do
So
it.
it's
Yeah.
not always the accuracy, you know, let's not get accuracy get in the way of a good story. So,
So
but it's how
mindful
we consume.
education, I think it's important in this health tech space. So probably education will be huge in the mental health tech space, because if you get children to be able to think differently, they're going to have a different hormonal response, physiological response, aren't they? If you believe
Yeah,
something, it completely changes how you feel about something. If you understand it and you believe, you know, something's a certain way. If you saw something bad on the news and you knew it was a, you know, a statistical improbability, you're going to feel slightly different than thinking you're going to walk outside the door and you're going to be murdered. I mean, every
yeah.
step you take. If you say, look,
It's
this,
about perspective.
yeah, you're more likely to, you know, drown in a bath than this happened to you statistically. But
Yeah,
if you haven't got that perspective or that knowledge or the education, you're going to be completely in a negative thought loop. So it's
yeah,
important, probably education from childhood is going to be huge in the health tech space, isn't it?
yeah. And again, we
Anything
come back
else on
to
that
the
space,
schooling
James?
system. Well, I think, I
What's
mean,
something creative in the health tech space where you can feel mental health tech space? Let's do like to finish it off, a brainstorm. Mental health tech space, something first principles. Anything's coming to mind straight off the bat on this one?
I mean, there's
We've
again
got
looking at apps
wearables, haven't we?
as
Apps,
there's
data,
apps that covered
wearables.
journaling, and, you know, even like just having a book. I mean, a physical book to write in. That there's now apps that you can kind of journal, and it's supposed to, you know, help you to get into the habit of journaling on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And prompting you. Whereas actually you do have a book with some paper and a pen, and you could just sit down and write the physical act of doing it, as opposed to having an app.
Yeah.
But I
What about
think,
mental health stuff? I think I just came up with an idea of you have this app and you can either switch it on or off, that you're open to have a conversation with somebody in the public. So if two of you, this might already exist, I don't know. But if you're on a train or you're walking somewhere, you might get a little buzz or a notification. Let's say you're sitting in a carriage or you're a couple of seats down. I don't know you, you don't know me, but we're on this app, Connector app, and we're open to conversation. Then it connects you, you get a little ping, and then you can like meet each other and just have a little conversation. You might want a little 20-minute conversation on the thing.
Dating apps do that.
I don't
already,
think even for dating. I think it would just be just normal.
Yeah, but how do you differentiate? How do you differentiate? Dating apps are doing that already, mate.
What, that you just they can see you're in the vicinity?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, maybe like 100%. LinkedIn could have something like that, couldn't it? Where if you're close to a LinkedIn person, you can see what their profile is, and they say, "Are you open to conversation on a train?"
You can do that. I think.
Seriously?
Yeah, I think it's already.
Have you ever been pinged?
No.
In public?
Well, I believe it is already. I might be entirely wrong, but I do believe that
I'd be
actually
surprised.
does exist.
I don't know. Would you be open to that?
But when you think about it, though, mate, it's LinkedIn is all about connecting people. That there's going to be a facility there that if you're at an event, you can sign up for something. There's certainly apps, again, like sort of exhibition apps that you can then put yourself out to sort of like have a virtual coffee or like a networking type thing. So there's definitely that already available for on sort of a business level. I think the lines get a little bit blurred if it was for mental health and for a social side of things with dating, because they're very, very similar things, aren't they? It's all about meeting people. So it's how you differentiate between the intentionality that if you're looking for romantic connection or just human connection.
Yeah, which would be a good talk actually, because there's nothing really bad about meeting your spouse at work, is there? But now there's like a big thing about it being a problem. But a lot of people do meet.
Yeah, because you think how much time you spend with that other person. You see them every day. You see them social situations. You can start to assess how they are with their co-workers. You can have a conversation with them, and even if it's not a physical attraction, that can grow over time of that contact. It's not like you just saw them at a bar once and that was it. You were smitten. There's that kind of slow burn type relationships. And you're in a
nightmare, James, if it doesn't go well, isn't it? Imagine the relationship goes pear-shaped, and then you've got to work with.
Yep.
That's
and affairs and all sorts happen at work, don't they?
Yeah, but it's a very. We'll have to give more thought to the creative side of that. I think apart from apps, then we're going from apps to potentially things inserted into our brains. But if we've talked about the book Blue Zones before, haven't you, where people live to 100 and beyond, and all of the 9 pillars of health. It's having a look at those and seeing how you can either fix issues from first principles thinking before you get to it, or how you can better facilitate the actions that lead to a healthier mindset overall. And I think maybe it's going to be a little bit of both of that, isn't it, on the health tech space? But it's changing. Whoa, it's changing quick, isn't it, James? It really is. It really is.
I can foresee some sort of, almost like cyborg situation that we've got technology integrated into the human body. In whatever shape or form it's like, to make us uber humans.
Yeah.
Intelligence-wise, sensitivity, that you can feel things, you're stronger, you're faster, cognitively more adept at circumstances. Maybe there'll be some environmental thing that goes on that, nanobots will respond to pathogens. In terms of evolution, it's fascinating to see where things are going. Repair for the human body, 3D printed organs. It'd be like going for an MOT that you just have parts replaced.
Yeah, we might build up some evolutionary coping mechanism to isolation. We might be able to function quite well with it. It sounds weird for any human now, but we're definitely in the
Who knows?
isolation gym, aren't we? A lot of people are isolated, so
Yeah.
who knows what
Yeah.
that does to our psychology on the longer term. We might just get used
How
to
much of that interaction is going to be manufactured? It's like just meeting your spouse or meeting, whoever right now happens on the whole naturally to an extent. I mean, we've got dating apps and online dating and everything else that's occurring. But, is that going to get to a point where even that doesn't happen anymore, that we don't have that interaction, that everything is now manufactured, that you're sort of paired up with somebody by some algorithm and there's very little contact? Maybe there's an exchange of fluids in some way that actually to propagate and to keep the human species going, that those interactions are very, very different to how they look now.
Was it Demolition Man with Sylvester Stallone? Remember that?
It's Demolition Man, isn't it? That's where I was going with it.
It's the helmet on.
The headset.
It was a great
Virtual
film,
sex.
isn't it?
Virtual sex.
It was an absolute brilliant film. It gives you a little bit of an insight, and you can sort of imagine it, can't you? You can see that type of trajectory.
It feels like, or you believe what we were saying, that it's going to go full circle, that actually there'll be even more emphasis on human-to-human contact.
Yeah.
And then the technology then starts to get regulated and controlled, that we take back control, and it's not just a sort of runaway train that is ruling our lives.
Liberates us, maybe. Could liberate us from the mundanity of the things that are disconnecting us. And then what will be left is real life events, education, concerts, community hubs, educational hubs, because you won't need people to be sat on computers by themselves, will you? That could be all done by computers, and it could be back to exploration, creativity in the real world. I can see it going that way. I don't know if it'll be in the next 10, 20 years. I think we'll have a lot of symptoms-based health tech applications, and then the environmental side might switch round, and then it will go back to human contact. So
I think we've got to focus on fixing the planet first and then figure out everything else afterwards. But there you go.
But the planet will be fine. It'll be we might screw it, but the Mother Nature will be okay.
It'll find a way.
It might not be hospitable for us. But thanks, guys. Good conversation. It's a big conversation, one that will be ongoing. And we'll see you very, very soon. Thank you, James Silo, and enjoy the weather.
John Hastings.
It's beautiful,
and you, my friend.
Time to go outside. Go for a walk.
Go get some vitamin D.
Excellent. Okay, James. Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Much love.
Thanks for being. Bye-bye.
Bye.